120 Speedrunners. Ryan picked up two ladies in Rust Town, with a skeletal zombie chained to his car hood. Seriously? Ryan asked his girlfriend with skeptical eyes. While Fortuna came to the mission with her sensual, white latex catsuit, Livia brought a pair of jeans and a blue hoodie. I'm not letting you in. I'm sorry, it's the only practical clothing I could grab in an hour, Livia apologized. Ryan's loops began while she was having a girls' day out with Fortuna, and although it allowed the two to slip away from the Augusti undetected in spite of Geist's sudden disappearance, it didn't give them enough time to find the perfect outfit. But it's cotton. Passable, Ryan replied with a shrug, before reluctantly letting them in. The courier had come fully prepared, with the Fisty Brothers gauntlets and two submachine guns waiting on the front seat. He had even gotten the bowler hat out of storage, ready for war, and convinced Polly to hand over his secret weapon. It was amazing how much one could achieve in an hour with the perfect timing and little traffic. Ryan would rather have more time to prepare, but they couldn't wait any longer. Big Fat Adam was about to throw his captives into the meat grinder any second now. Livy, you should have told me, Fortuna said as she and Livia climbed at the back. I had a backup suit. I know, but, her best friend responded with an awkward smile. I find it a little indecent. It's not indecent, it's gawking. Fortuna complained with a blush, as Ryan drove through the district's desolate streets. And is that a real skeleton on the car hood? Help! Ghoul suddenly screamed at the car's front, startling Fortuna. The psycho had lost both his legs and hands, leaving only the head and rib cage chained below the windshield. Help me, he's mad. He's mad. Shush, my little astronaut, Ryan said with a soft, gentle tone. It made the undead psycho cower in fear. Living people are talking. Don't worry, he deserves it, Livia explained to Fortuna, before glancing at her boyfriend. Felix and the others will arrive a few minutes after us. Good, I can make a great first impression then. Ryan smashed the accelerator, and aimed straight for the junkyard. Ghoul screamed, as the district's toxic wind battered his naked eyes. Felix is coming too? Fortuna asked at the back, eminently curious. Since she acted as Livia's bodyguard and trusted her best friend absolutely, she must have come without asking many questions. He's coming back to us? No, Livia replied, but Ryan convinced him to make an effort and keep in touch. You did? Lucky Girl glanced at the handsome driver with renewed respect. You know, I was about to say Livia was too good for you, but I take it back. Thank you, Ryan said, as he noticed the trash walls of the junkyard appearing in the distance. Where is my payment? The ammo? Fortuna gave Ryan a handful of pointed, arrow-shaped bullets. Ryan grabbed a gun while the Plymouth Fury drove by itself. You're in luck, the gun shop had some in stock. What did you need these bullets for? Whale hunting, Ryan replied, as he loaded the ammo in his gun and showcased it to his girlfriend. 16 rounds, 9mm. It can quickly fire round after round without pause. Hard question. Livia gave him a playful look. Does it ever jam? Never, nor does it overheat. It can keep pumping out rounds all night long. Ryan gently caressed the tip of the barrel. Though I often need help with the safety catch. Good, I have a firm but gentle handle on these things, his girlfriend said with a coy voice, as she grabbed the Fisty Brothers and put them on. I could help with the finger work. Be gentle though, Ryan warned, as he put his weapon inside his trench coat, right between the sleeping plushie and the Bliss inhaler. The barrel is one of a kind and the trigger is very sensitive. One wrong move, and it'll fire too soon. Are you talking about weapons or something else? Fortuna asked, as red as a tomato. I have Polly's rocket launcher below your seat, if you want to try a heavier caliber, Ryan said innocently. I hope you're open to new experiences, because your target is a she. Before Fortuna could protest, Len's voice came out of the chronoradio. I'm in position, Riri. What about Henriette and Eugene Henry? Ryan asked back, as they came into view of the junkyard. Hills of trash and stacks of cars overshadowed a fence, shielded by the reptilian and Gemini. Both observed the car approaching in confusion, while Ghoul screamed in terror. At the orphanage with Sarah. Perfect. Ghoul. The reptilian shouted upon recognizing his teammate, his reptilian eyes widening in terror. In response, Ryan opened his window and pointed a finger at the U.S. government's secret lizard man master. Witness me. Gemini's light body instantly vanished in a flash of light, while the reptilian narrowly managed to leap out of the way before the crazed driver could hit him. Ryan's car smashed through the fence at full speed. Ryan drove through the junkyard's labyrinth of trash walls like a conquered realm, ignoring the psychos scavenging in the area. Mongrel glanced at the intruders from atop a rusted car, his teeth sinking into a living rat's back. Having grown to know the guy in previous loops, the sight filled Ryan with compassion. Mongrel truly didn't deserve being turned into an animal, and the courier would make sure to help him take his life back. Instead of attacking, Ryan tossed grenades behind him to collapse some of the trash walls and disrupt ground-based reinforcements. His own would come from above anyway. By the time someone sounded the alarm and the sound of bells echoed in the junkyard, Ryan's group was almost in view of the bunker's entrance. The driver sensed the heavy gaze of the land on him, and a quake sent debris falling on his car. Having lived through this situation multiple times, the time traveler easily zigzagged around the improvised projectiles. When Ryan reached the junkyard's landmark trash tower and the tunnel leading to the bunker, he noticed two shadows flying in the skies above. Two would-be heroes, floating on glass surfboards. Unfortunately, toxic clouds already formed above the junkyard, as acid rain and mosquito moved to protect the tunnel's entrance. Thieves, the former snarled as she drew knives. Much like Mongrel before her, the sight of her maddened expression made Ryan pity her. Blondie, shoot! The courier shouted, as he veered his car to the left. Shoot the other blonde. Double Blondie. All right. Fortuna opened the car's door mid-motion and leaped out of it, Polly's rocket launcher in hand. She pressed the trigger before she even landed on her feet, aiming for acid rain. The surprised psycho took a step back as a rocket with a smiley face painted on the tip flew straight at her. She immediately teleported above a trash wall as an acid drizzle started raining down from the toxic clouds above. It helped little, for the Genius Tech missile followed and forced her to retreat. It would take minutes for the projectile to run out of fuel, keeping acid rain occupied. Mosquito, meanwhile, extended his wings and rushed at the Plymouth Fury with a fist raised. He only noticed the shadow above him all too late, a black and white angel of death and destruction. Timmy had leaped from his glass surfboard, and transformed mid-flight. Flying Panda Press. The panda gracefully landed on Mosquito like a fly swatter, and buried him alive beneath pounds of fur and fat. Felix's landing was far more gracious, as his glass surfboard landed in the middle of the courtyard. Ryan parked his Plymouth Fury right next to it, stepping out of the car alongside Livia with grace and dignity. Felix! Fortuna rejoiced at her brother's presence, tossing the empty rocket launcher away. Livia handed her best friend a submachine gun as a replacement, while Ryan claimed the other for himself. You know, sis, I always wondered how a team-up would go, Adam Cat replied, before noticing Mongrel leaping into view atop a trash wall. The maddened psycho summoned a fireball into his hand. Remember, kitten, no lethal force, Ryan said. Stick to pebbles.
Yeah.
I've got this, he replied before grabbing empty tin cans from the trash walls, turning them into bombs, and tossing them at Mongrel. His projectiles and the psychos hit each other in the air, sparking a devastating blast. Unfortunately, the explosion caused a weakened trash wall to collapse on itself and cast a rain of debris on Fortuna, the panda, and Mosquito. Felix's eyes immediately widened in panic as he realized his screw-up. "Sis," he shouted as loudly as he could. "Sis." While Timmy managed to drag his unconscious enemy out of danger, Lucky Girl was too close to dodge. She looked at the collapsing debris with shock, as her powers somehow failed to deflect them. Ryan almost froze time and rushed to her rescue, before noticing Livia smiling. A second later, an invisible force grabbed the living lottery ticket, carrying her above the ground and to safety. By now, Ryan should have known better. "We'll take it from here, quick save," Shroud declared as he became visible, holding a blushing Fortuna in his arms bridal style. And her power didn't even need to force his hand this time around. "Clean up the nest." Felix didn't hide his relief. "Thanks," he said to Matthias, before focusing back on Mongrel. His sister's reaction was far less refined. "Felix, you screw up, you almost dirted my clothes," she complained, shouting so loudly that Shroud winced. "I will strangle you if the mutants don't kill you first." "I would suggest drowning him, he doesn't like being wet," Ryan replied, as he and Livia moved into the shaking tunnel. Before he abandoned the surface, the courier gave the situation a cursory glance. These events were so familiar, yet different. A scenario honed through multiple repetitions, built upon information he had collected over many loops, executed by allies he had gathered on his journey. After so long, it was all coming together. And yet he immediately noticed something utterly new. Something he never imagined would happen, except in his wildest dreams. His Plymouth Fury. His Plymouth Fury hadn't taken any damage. "It's a holy sign," Ryan muttered to himself with religious awe. "And if we do our part right, it will make it through the day intact," Livia said with a grin. Perfect run confirmed. The couple rushed into the tunnel while its walls trembled, the land attempting to collapse them. The duo quickly reached the bunker's black door entrance and faced a pack of 4 Dynamis drones. "I take the left, you take the right," Ryan asked his girlfriend, before sensing a chill down his SP. When Ryan regained consciousness, the couple was walking through the blast doors while leaving 4 wrecked bots in their wake. "You were saying?" Livia asked, teasing him by caressing the fisty brothers. "You're greedy, Miss Auguste," Ryan complained, as the tunnel collapsed behind them. "Greedy, me?" she replied with a smirk, as they entered the metal corridor leading to the bunker's main hall. "You are the one keeping the best stuff for yourself. And here I was preparing you a big surprise." Ryan glanced through the reinforced windows to the hangars beyond, and at Psyshock's thralls toiling on Mekran's mech and submarine. He noticed Len's armored head peeking over the waters linking the underground complex to the sea outside, and waved at her through the reinforced glass. "A surprise, Mr. Romano?" Livia asked, suddenly interested. "I love surprises." "For the Dynami's date, Princess," Ryan said, as Len suddenly emerged from the waters and attacked the thralls with her bubble rifle. "The Dynami's date." "I can't wait," she said, as they entered the bunker's recreational area. Much like in Ryan's suicide run, 6 psychos occupied the room. Saren, the liquid ink machine, and the faceless incognito played pool alongside the sickly white, bald pale guy. Rakshasa played Street Fighter on the room's arcade, while a disembodied Asian woman's head floated behind the bar counter. Ryan remembered her name as the dreaded fuckface. Saren hit a ball with a cue stick, before looking up at the newcomers. She didn't say a word, and for a brief instant, the courier worried that the transfer hadn't worked. Thankfully, they had agreed on a secret code to test that out. "The fart is in the toilet," Ryan said, before clocking his submachine gun. "I repeat, the fart is in the toile. I heard you for the first time, jackass. Bianca let out a sigh as she put her cue stick aside. Took you long enough. You know these guys, Saren? Ink Machine asked, falsely reassured by her teammates' casualness. They're new recruits? The new management, Bianca replied, before suddenly pointing her vibrating gauntlets at both Ink Machine and Rakshasa. She blasted them both by surprise, turning the former into a puddle and blasting the latter headfirst into the arcade. Bianca, you heartless monster! Ryan mourned the arcade game, before opening fire at the other psychos. Though he was careful not to kill any of them, he didn't even manage to wound them. Incognito dived behind the pool table for protection, while Fuckface materialized crimson arms of energy to deflect the bullets. Pale Guy simply dodged, but Livia quickly moved to engage him in melee. Saren, you traitor! Fuckface snarled from behind the counter. Incognito, call Frank. Incognito hastily rushed towards the elevator, but Ryan quickly shot him in the knees with his submachine gun. The metagang member collapsed on the ground with bloodied legs, writhing in pain. Sorry, you'll live, Ryan apologized to the faceless psycho, before turning his submachine gun at the bar counter. We meet again, fuckface. Won't say I missed you though. That's not my name, the floating head complained, before spitting a stream of acid at the time traveler. Ryan frowned behind his mask as he froze time and dodged. Her name was, Wait, she was right. The courier had nicknamed her Fuckface on his first suicide run and never bothered to look deeper afterward. Pale Guy too, now that he thought of it. They hadn't survived their group's civil war either during his metagang run, so he never got to know them in depth either. No way, I never learned these two mooks' names. Ryan complained as time resumed. By then, he had closed the gap with Fuckface, tossed his submachine gun aside, and grabbed her by the hair. Before the psycho could retaliate with her energy arms, the courier violently smashed her head against the bar counter with enough force to splinter it, knocking her unconscious. Her energy tentacles vanished into red flux particles. Bianca, what are these red shirts called? Does it matter, nerd? Bianca asked, as she started targeting Pale Guy. The psycho dodged her blast, but Livia exploited the opportunity to flank him from another direction. Repeated attacks from multiple fronts quickly pushed him back against a corner. Yes, it does, Ryan said, as he stepped over a bloodied Incognito and an unconscious Rakshasa. I'm a completionist. Catcher and Penangolin, Livia replied as she finally managed to hit Pale Guy in the chest with Fisty. The blow sent the psycho hitting the nearest wall, knocking him out of the fight. Pfft, Fuckface sounded better. Ryan would make changing her name a top priority when he took back his office of the Metagang's president for life. Still, the courier could now carry on his perfect run with a clear conscience and moved towards the elevator. All right, can you drag these guys to shore for safekeeping? Ryan asked his teammates, with the same tone as someone running through a shopping list. And help her with the thralls outside? There's a lot of them. Sure, but don't take too long downstairs, Livia said while dragging the dizzied fuckface away. Bianca, meanwhile, kept Ink Machine trapped in puddle form with weak vibrations. I want to invite everyone afterward to celebrate, and the restaurant closes early. Also, Dad will start worrying now that Geist is gone. Thai, or French? Ryan asked before pushing the lifts button, knowing that she disliked Japanese food. Russian, to try something new. His girlfriend replied right as the elevator's doors closed. Oh well, at least short you would like it. The lift reached its destination, and Ryan quickly made his way through the bunker's hub room and metal corridor. He hastily reached the infirmary, and found Psyshock brainwashing two Rust Town addicts strapped to operation tables. He raised his head at Ryan, while the courier's hand reached out for the bliss inhaler hidden beneath his trench coat. Little Cesare. Pishok didn't show any fear at the sudden intrusion, overconfident in his immortality. How strange too. Ryan froze time and applied the inhaler to his hated foe's face right before the clock resumed. Don't worry, psy, Ryan taunted Psyshock, before activating the inhaler. This is not meth. The surprised Psycho's tentacles thrashed around as bliss spread through his nervous system, but Ryan held strong. Psyshock's energy quickly left him as the overdose paralyzed his brain, and the psychotic metal squid collapsed on the ground. The courier gave him a quick kick, before hiding the bliss inhaler in a pocket. Agent Frank. Ryan called out, knowing the metal giant was waiting a few rooms away. That was how Psyshock had sicked him on the courier halfway through the first suicide run. Agent Frank, hurry. Russian agents poisoned the VP with Soviet caviar. The colossal giant of steel came rushing inside the infirmary, to find a maskless Ryan holding the drugged Psyshock in his arms, crocodile tears running down his cheeks. Agent Frank, U.S. Secret Service. The giant threatened Ryan with a raised fist. Identify yourself. Ryan Romano, CIA. Ryan sobbed. We survived Pearl Harbor together. Us and Sergeant Arch Dornan. Don't you remember the boat, Agent Frank? The boat? A confused Frank the Mad waved an index finger at Ryan, as he remembered a day that never happened. You were the private. The private on the boat. Thank God Livia predicted how to get inside his head. You saved my life, Agent Frank, and today, I pay my debt. Ryan wiped away his false tears. I did all I could to save him, but the communists poisoned even the air, Agent Frank. I knew they put something in the airplanes. Frank immediately looked at the drooling Psyshock with a worried gaze. What can we do? I did all I could to save him, but this is a communist coup, Agent Frank. They're trying to destroy the government. Only now did Agent Frank understand the true threat their democracy faced. The president is down there. The giant panicked. We must secure his safety. No, Agent Frank, not we. It's a suicide mission. Ryan delicately gave the drooling Psyshock to Frank, who held him in his arms like a secret treasure. I will do it. You stay here and protect the vice president from a Russian counterattack, until Agent Sarin comes back with medical help. The U.S. Secret Service does not. Democracy can only survive if Ryan cleared his throat, his voice as heavy as a soldier marching to certain death. If you live, Agent Frank. If the president dies, the vice presidency must endure. Do you understand this, Agent Frank? Ryan let out a long, long sigh, as he put his mask and bowler hat on. Let me die for my country, he pleaded, before adjusting his hat, as a hero. I understand, Frank the Mad Lad replied, before offering Ryan a military salute with one hand while holding Psyshock in the other. Semper Fi. Semper Fi. Ryan returned the salute, before walking out of the infirmary with a heavy heart. There. According to Livia, if dealt in that way, Frank would follow orders and remain in the infirmary until the group could secure the rest of the bunker. So far the metagang's route was total, but the main course waited a few rooms ahead. Leaving the neutralized Frank and Psyshock behind, Ryan continued deeper into the complex and reached a familiar underground chamber. 7 knockoff elixir vats were lined up on a nearby wall, half of them occupied by mutated test subjects. One of the chamber's 2 blast doors was opened, and the courier heard footsteps echo from this direction. You know, since I've been in New Rome, I've fought aliens, psychos, and power-mad genomes, and few left a big impression. Ryan grabbed his Beretta, as his foe stepped out of the darkness. But you, fat ass? Your shadow cast a heavy presence. Augustus was stronger and Fallout more determined, but the metagang's leader was shrewder, crueler, and in the end, more dangerous. That was why he had to die first. What can I say, mate? I've hurt lots of people, and today will be an all-you-can-eat buffet. Adam the ogre emerged from the shadow with a hand behind his back, his carbon skin as black as his soul, the grin on his face vicious and cruel. But gotta say, I've never tasted a fellow violet before. Make that last loop count, by Bendham, Ryan said, as he raised his gun. You won't get another. 121, Presidential Debate. 2 presidents had walked into a room, and only one would escape it alive. How about we start this debate with gun politics? Ryan said, as he cocked his Beretta. Then we can move on to the war on terror. Spoiler warning, you're going to lose it hard. I was about to suggest dietary policies, laddie, the living Michelin ad replied with pitch-black humor, as he kept his left hand hidden behind his back. Having lived through this situation before, Ryan had a pretty good idea of what, or rather who, he kept in reserve. You'll be the second person most concerned. He revealed his left hand, and Ryan didn't flinch. Big Fat Adam had brought a hostage, as he did during the courier's suicide run. An Arab boy no older than 14, with tears of terror raining down his cheeks. A Rust Town denizen kidnapped to serve as cannon fodder against the bunker's defenses. And though I prefer to eat French, Adam said with a vicious smirk, moving his right hand to hold his prisoner like a sandwich, I can settle for a keb. Ryan swiftly shot him thrice, once in the face, and twice in the left hand. Big Fat Adam closed his eyelids on reflex, but the first bullet impacted on the giant's left eye and bypassed the carbon skin. The ocular organ exploded into a rain of shrapnel and blood, while the other bullets blew off the psycho's thumb. The surprised Adam let out a roar of pain and agony, and his victim slipped through his bloodied fingers. Sorry, fat ass, you made that joke before, Ryan said as he rushed toward the falling victim and activated his power. And it wasn't funny the first time either. Adam's right hand lunged to grab his hostage, but stopped inches away from his neck as the world turned purple. Ryan caught his damsel in distress in his arms, and immediately moonwalked in the opposite direction. No sooner did time resume than Adam's carbon fist hit the metal ground, bending the steel. Run, Ryan said, as he helped the hostage stand on his feet. But, he started to speak in a Turkish dialect, too shocked to react. Escape through the corridor to the nearest voting booth, and stuff these ballots. Ryan shouted in the same tongue, while Adam rushed at them with murderous fury. Vote for me. The hostage was too shaken to do his patriotic duty, so Ryan decided to narrow his voting options. He began to freeze time, right as Adam the ogre protected his face with his right hand. Odd timing. But still, Ryan loved immobile targets, and shot the hardened psycho in the left leg thrice. One bullet bounced off his knee, but the others blasted holes in the calf. Let me introduce you to my friend, depleted, Ryan said as time resumed. Adam stumbled on the cold hard ground, and the courier was still out of his hand's reach. Family name uranium. President Romano did not believe in gun control. Where Ryan's presidential charisma failed, the fear of the opposition worked like a charm. The hostage ran as fast as he could through the entrance corridor, leaving the 2 POTUS candidates to fight for the White House. I remember that voice, Adam rasped as he rose back to his feet. In spite of the calf wounds, his enhanced genome metabolism allowed him to carry on. Your bloodstreams, kid. Cesare something. You're here to settle Daddy's score with us? Actually, I'm here to take your presidential office for myself, Ryan said, as he circled the giant from the left and waited for his time-stop's cooldown to end. Even people in your campaign staff voted for me. The dead don't get to vote, Adam replied, although without any false joviality. His jaw extended as he put his unharmed hand through, and he brought out a grenade with Mecren's symbol on it. And you're forgetting abstention. He activated the bomb and tossed it at Ryan. The courier froze time and dashed to the left side to dodge, while Adam lowered himself as if to sprint. Ryan couldn't afford to waste his precious special ammo, as he had only a limited amount. Worse, although the bullets were top-notch quality, the caliber couldn't pierce the Colossus carbon shield in all places. The bones below the knee were probably as hard as the skin protecting them, and unlike lightning bullets didn't have enough strength to break them. The courier would write down adamantine bullets on his Christmas list, but in the meantime, he needed to target Adam's throat and stomach. Ryan wondered how the psycho's second power would react to intestinal wounds though. Well, time to find out. The courier shot the psycho in his belly, which was so big that he barely bothered to aim. The bullet tore a hole through the carbon skin as time resumed, but no blood flowed out of the wound. If anything, Ryan noticed air getting sucked into the opening. The live grenade exploded in a fiery blast of red particles without harming anyone, while Big Fat Adam sprinted at his rival. Ryan had to roll to the side to avoid a punch, then lower himself to avoid a second. The ogre moved with greater speed and agility than his size would suggest, giving his foe no breathing room. Worse, Ryan quickly realized that the psycho's attacks weren't random at all. Though the courier survived the volley of blows by retreating, he did so by getting closer to the colored vats in the chamber. Some contained knockoff elixirs, or substances just as dangerous. "Say no to drugs, kids," Ryan replied while raising his gun to counterattack, freezing time to get a better line of fire. But Big Fat Adam quickly covered his head, once again shielding his lone remaining eye. A doubt crossed Ryan's mind. The courier fired another bullet in the frozen Adam's gullet, before diving down between the giant's legs. The shot opened a hole in the psycho's throat, but once again no blood flowed out. Big Fat Adam held a pocket dimension in his innards, but it seemed to spread all the way through the gullet. When time resumed, Ryan had run as far away from the knockoff vats as possible, while Adam the ogre quickly pivoted. 8 seconds, mate, the metagang's leader said, as he glanced at the distance between Ryan's current spot and his previous one. His voice had turned raspy from the throat wound, but he could still speak. 10 if you push it. That's your limit. How did you know I was a violet? Ryan asked, holding the Beretta with one hand and grabbing throwing knives from below his trench coat with the other. You hadn't recognized me then. Call it a gut feeling, boyo, Adam replied, before grabbing the blue liquid vat with both hands, and ripping it off the ground. Cables dangled from the device, spraying the carbon-skinned man with azure, shining liquid. Takes one to know one. Acid rain. Adam was like acid rain. He could sense Ryan's power, at least instinctively. The courier had never dueled the metagang's leader for an extended period in the past. Each of them usually fought with backup, so Ryan never paid his movements full attention. But the way the psycho covered his vitals whenever the courier attempted to freeze time, or the quickness of his reactions whenever time resumed. Ryan remembered his first encounter with the big fat president, which ended with the courier backhanded all the way across this very room. He thought the fat ass had simply been fast enough to hit him right after his time stop ended, but now, the courier wondered if Adam actually sensed him. That bastard! Even after so many loops, he still kept tricks up his sleeve. Thankfully, unlike acid rain, the fat ass didn't have the reflexes nor teleportation ability to fully exploit that knowledge. Ryan still had the edge, and most importantly, experience. The psycho threw the vat at the courier, right as Ryan tossed a knife at his right eye. Adam closed his eyelid and the blade bounced off it, but this gave the courier time to adjust his aim. His bullet crossed the gap between the two fighters faster than the glass vat did, blowing off Adam's other eye. Ryan froze time before the vat could hit him and quickly dashed to safety, counting back his ammo. He still had half left, but he was burning through his reserve faster than the national defense budget. The vat exploded on the ground on impact, spraying blue liquid and glass shards in all directions. Ryan had escaped to safety by then, but a puddle of liquid spread on the steel ground. If the drops made it past his clothes and reached the skin beneath. "You know me, mate," Adam rasped angrily, before grabbing another liquid vat, red this time. His face had turned red from the blood flowing from his eyes. If anything, the outside now matched the inside in its horror. "You know how I fight. You move like a dancer rehearsing his show. This isn't our first rodeo." "But it's gonna be the last," Ryan replied, before realizing his mistake as the blind psycho tossed the vat in his direction. He might have been blinded, but he could still hear his foe. The courier dodged another projectile, but another red puddle joined the blue one, both covering half the chamber's ground. Adam dragged a heavy flail from his gullet, and swiftly swung it with his right hand. Realizing he couldn't keep fighting in this arena without risking getting exposed to the knockoffs, Ryan dashed towards the chamber's exit. His boots made a sound while he walked on a drop of liquid, alerting Adam to his position. The ogre's flail lunged for Ryan's head so fast that the courier had to stop time to avoid becoming a Picasso picture, rushing into the corridor without looking back. The time traveler heard the flail's spiked head hit a wall with a devastating impact, but he had safely made it out of the chamber. Or so he thought. A sharp pain raced across his waist, making him stumble inside the corridor. The panicked Ryan glanced at his belly, seeing the tip of an arrow sticking out from his trenchcoat. "Crossbow," the courier realized, as he heard footsteps behind him. "A crossbow bolt. Not so easy without space to run around, huh?" Adam said as he dropped the flail and entered the steel corridor, his head reaching the ceiling. "You've been here before." His smirk widened, a crossbow bolt sticking out from between his teeth. "Lived through this before." "Shit." Struggling against the pain, Ryan opened fire with the Beretta. He blew holes in the blind Adam's throat and chest, while the psycho responded by spitting out a volley of crossbow bolts. First one, then two, then 10. Ryan exploited his time stop to dodge the first volley and back away, but the bolt embedded in his body slowed him down. When time resumed, one of his foe's projectiles hit him in the right leg below the knee. The courier collapsed on the cold hard ground, the ogre's footsteps growing ever closer. "I can smell your fear," Adam said as he gained ground on the courier. The wounds didn't slow him down at all. "I knew something was up when I watched you on the cams. Your timing was too perfect, your team too well prepared. And then I wondered, if you can control time enough to stop it, maybe you could turn it back too?" Ryan attempted to shoot his foe again, before realizing he had exhausted all his ammo. With one last card up his sleeve, the courier put a hand in his trench coat and grabbed his secret weapon. "Time to see how far your pocket dimension extends," by Bendham, Ryan thought. But well, if you could do it all the time, you would have turned the clock by now. And if you fear the substitute so much, then the real deal will hurt even worse. Adam opened his mouth, the tip of a blue elixir syringe sticking out from the gullet. "Time to take your Medici." "Filibuster," Ryan replied before throwing the triggered A-bomb down Adam's throat mid-speech. The surprised Adam gulped on instinct, swallowing both the explosive device and his own blue elixir. The psycho covered his mouth with his hands, perhaps trying to vomit out the bomb, but he was too late to make a difference. Ryan immediately crawled as far away as he could, while the bullet wounds on his foe's chest and throat started to light up. "Bon appetit," he said, taking the time to taunt his foe one last time. "Ugh," Adam hiccuped, and then breathed atomic fire. As it turned out, his pocket dimension was large, but not infinite. The courier barely had the time to dive down as streams of flames erupted from the psycho's mouth, nose, and his bullet wounds. They hit the corridor's ceiling and walls in straight lines, melting the bunker's steel. Ryan himself used quick bursts of time stop to position himself out of the fire's paths. Like a balloon deflating as air escaped him, the flame's power tossed Adam the ogre backward, his body rebounding off the walls. His empty eye sockets unleashed a stream of light, the blood drying up. The air in the corridor heated up by 20 degrees, enough to make Ryan sweat beneath his coat. And then, the flames died out as quickly as they had spread. Bendham ended his flight at the corridor's threshold, right before the vat chamber. When Ryan finally dared to look up at him, the psycho's face had turned into a volcanic landscape, his metal skin melting off the charred hole that used to be his skull. Adam's pocket dimension had contained most of the explosion, but flames from the blast had traveled up through his gullet, nostrils, and the openings the depleted uranium bullets had created in his belly, cooking his organs from within. "Spicy dessert, Ryan said to Adam's corpse, as he heard his ally's footsteps. His vision blurred from the blood loss and the pain, but he couldn't help but chuckle to himself. Served with karmic sauce. Adam the ogre didn't answer. The Metagang's presidential debate had ended in a KO. Like any good administration, Ryan's first act in office was to clean up the house. Though he had to give orders from the infirmary, after expelling the former vice president. Thankfully, Livia knew exactly what to say to Agent Frank to lead him around, even managing to get the overdosed Psyshock out of his care. She had pretended that she would send him to a special doctor's care. A doctor called Cancel. "Thank God you have a doctorate in medicine," Ryan said to the panda as he lay on the operation table, his sidekick surgically extracting the crossbow bolt and quickly patched up the courier's wounds. Livia sat at her boyfriend's side all the way through the procedure, holding his hand. Alongside physics, philosophy, and pretty much everything else. "I don't learn quickly anymore, Sifu, but I remember everything," the panda replied while applying bandages. "Does it hurt?" "I'm a Vietnam vet," Ryan replied, "I can endure anything." "Be careful, phony veterans don't last long in office," Livia mused. "I've lived through more wars than chest colds." Ryan protested, before apologizing to his sidekick for the loss of his elixir. "I'm sorry that you won't get 2 powers this time around. Do you want a cushy job as an apology? Maybe Air Force One?" He owed the panda for his victory. The man-bear's fight with Adam in the previous loop had taught Ryan that the Psycho's leader was vulnerable to internal damage, and thus gave him the idea of using his A-bomb as a deadly main course. "He might still get a second wish," Livia said with a wistful smile. "Elixirs are extra-dimensional entities and can resist a great deal of damage. I've seen possibilities where we extract it from Adam's pocket dimension." Ryan hoped so. He couldn't consider this loop a perfect run with casualties, and elixirs were sentient beings too. "How is the situation in the field?" the president asked. "Are the troops behaving?" "The others are helping Len transport the captive psychos to underwater habitats," his first lady explained. "We're also giving first aid to the hostages." "Any casualties?" "None," she said before lightly kissing him on the cheek. "Thanks to you." The news came as a relief. Ryan had worked over more than 10 loops to save Rust Town from the Meta Gang, and he had finally succeeded. Having been warned, both Alchemo and the Carnival would make their way to New Rome. They would conquer the bunker, exploit its resources, and lay the groundwork for its final destruction. At long last, Mekran's ghost would be put back 6 feet under and never threaten the world again. Ryan couldn't rest on his laurels though. After recovering, he would bring the hammer down on Dynamis, and bury his own past. As for the Augusti... "What about Geist?" Ryan asked, but an amused Livia pushed her index finger against his lips. "Shush, we'll see to that later," she said with a tone that broke no disobedience. "Let's celebrate today's victory before moving on to tomorrow's challenge, Ryan." We've earned it. He couldn't argue with that. 122, second chances. Ryan never thought he would bring a communist to Dynami's doorstep. Enrique Manada's waiting room was nearly silent, with only the sound of a secretary typing on her computer to break the monotony. Felix looked through the window, impatient to be done with the meeting, while Len's fingers fidgeted uncontrollably. She had been in a sour mood since they arrived. Ryan didn't fare much better. His wounds still ached, and even his dazzling clothes couldn't hide all the bandages beneath them. Even with a genome's metabolism, it would take him a few days to be back in top shape. The courier's eyes wandered to his adoptive sister. She had made an effort to dress well for the occasion, trading her jumpsuit for a white blouse tucked by the waist into a blue skirt. A discreet red ribbon completed the set. Though Ryan's feelings for her had moved from romantic to brotherly over the last few loops, he still found her lovely. "Mr. Manada will receive you now," the secretary said, causing Len's scowl to deepen. "You're sure you want to come?" Ryan asked her. "I can take down the bourgeoisie on your behalf." "Yes," Shorty said with a firm nod. "I need it, Riri." At least she had taken Alchemo's meds before the meeting. As expected, the brain genius had arrived yesterday with his own team, quickly confirmed Ryan's time travel story after analyzing his mind map, and immediately moved on to secure the bunker. The courier trusted his allies to manage that part without him, especially with Livia at their back. Ryan had convinced his girlfriend to delay the celebrations until they could cure Bianca though. Celebrating the Metagang's demise without her felt wrong. The trio walked into Blackthorn's lair, the secretary closing the doors behind them. Len paid more attention to the Japanese pond than the flowers decorating the office, while Felix glanced at the people behind the mahogany desk. Though Enrique Manada welcomed them sitting in a chair costlier than most houses, Wyvern stood right behind him in her human form, arms crossed. "Felix," she greeted her teammate politely. "Wyvern," Adam Kitten said while returning the nod, before doing the same with his other superior. "Blackthorn." "Adam Cat." The superpowered gardener moved on to greet the others. "I am Enrique Manada, the chief brand officer at Dynamis and head manager of the Il Miglior program." The man shook Ryan's hand, but when he offered Short his own, she only responded with an icy glare. "She respects your private property," Ryan informed Blackthorn. "To each their own hand." "I see." Enrique understood the message and moved on, the trio sitting in comfy leather chairs facing the desk. "I admit I am curious. Adam Cat told me you wanted to discuss a possible partnership with our organization." "I don't see why you asked me to come as well," Wyvern said, arms crossed. She alone refused to sit down, perhaps because she worried that the meeting might end in a fistfight. "We wanted to have a meeting to discuss the collectivization of our economy," Ryan declared. "The more, the merrier." Huh, Enrique replied without emotion. "And the real reason?" Len looked at the superhero manager. "Why? Why what, Miss Sabino? Why did you do this to my father?" Len asked harshly, venom dripping with every word. "For money? For power? Was it worth it?" Enrique didn't respond, his fingers interlocked into a diabolical mastermind pose. His expression remained hidden behind his mask, though the flowers around the office seemed to bristle. Ryan searched for something under his trench coat, causing Wyvern to tense. Instead of a gun, the courier grabbed a folder and tossed it on the desk. Blackthorn made no move to read the documents inside it. "Enrique?" Dragon Mom asked her superior, confused. "I know what it holds," Enrique replied calmly, though Ryan noticed an undercurrent of shame behind the stoic facade. Wyvern frowned before glancing at Felix, who stared at Enrique with cold anger. She grabbed the folder and began to read the documents within, her skin turning as pale as chalk with the first lines. "That's impossible," she said as she turned the pages. "It's fake." "It's not," Len insisted. "You think I can believe half of what's inside? That Dynamis turned a psycho into a drink, or cloned me." The superheroine shook her head. "Lots of false information spreads about Lab 66 and the knockoff production process. I've heard all the conspiracy theories. Aliens, children's bodily fluids." "Well, they're half right," Ryan replied. "You can take my blood if you want," Short added, while Enrique remained as silent as a tombstone. "See for yourself. Underdiver, I know you attacked Dynamis installations in the past, but spreading these lies are a new low and will not help anyone." Wyvern put the file on the desk, a picture of a knockoff transforming into bloodstream slime slipping out of it. "Felix, don't tell me you believe them?" "I do," Felix replied grimly. "I took this picture." Dragon Mom remained in denial. "You were deceived. And that part about Dynamis funding the metagang is the most ridiculous thing I've heard yet." This time, Enrique wordlessly glanced at the documents and examined them. He quickly reached the part about the knockoff elixirs deliveries to Adam, transcripts of Psyshock's meetings with Hector Manada, and most importantly, the schematics of Dynamis' brain mapping machine. "Where did you get these documents?" the corpo asked, doubt gnawing at him. Len brought out a phone, activating it. The video showcased Agent Frank dutifully keeping watch over a pile of dangerous Marxist literature, trapped in an underwater prison. Wyvern immediately recognized this proud defender of democratic values. "Is that Frank the Mad?" "This is a live feed," Len explained, while Enrique watched on with sharp attention. "We neutralized the metagang's leadership, and currently hold most of their members in underwater cells," Felix said. The video switched to Dynamis' thralls being treated in an infirmary and to the knockoff crates. "We have dozens of witnesses currently receiving medical attention. You can visit them yourself." Wyvern scoffed. "Felix, are you saying that you defeated the metagang by yourselves?" "You can come to Rust Town and check," Len replied frostily. Her anger at Dynamis gave her confidence. "If you are willing to get down to earth and sully your clothes." The superheroine flinched, but quickly regained her composure. "I raided the metagang half a dozen times since they arrived in New Rome." "It changed nothing," Len rasped. "Hundreds would have died if we hadn't been here. Old people, children, they hoped you would come rescue them, but you never came." Tellingly, Dragon Mom didn't attempt to say she did all she could. She had advocated Il Miglior attack the metagang in the past, and still wished her superiors took her suggestion to heart. Speaking of her superiors, Enrique grabbed his own phone and started making calls. "I have been informed that some of our drones have gone missing lately, probably repurposed by the metagang," he said, the picture of the shattered machines on the desk. "Do you confirm?" Huh. Why wasn't I informed?" Wyvern glanced at her manager with worry. "Enrique? Pack your things, you're fired." Enrique ended the call, and made another. "Yes, it's me. I have been informed that elixirs from the April production were lost. Do you confirm?" What about the technicians from the robotic division, Team 7? Are they missing?" "Enrique?" Wyvern asked again, more and more concerned. Instead of answering, Dynamis' CBO made a dozen phone calls in 15 minutes, fact-checking every piece of information, following every lead. Ryan noticed that the flowers in the room grew more and more agitated as time went on, their petals dancing, their roots emerging from the earth. Wyvern noticed it too, and her doubt turned to horror. In the end, Enrique put his phone on the desk, turned his chair around, and looked through the window. He couldn't deny the truth before the overwhelming amount of evidence. Enrique, say something, Wyvern demanded. Please. Instead of answering her, the manager glanced at an empty spot to his left, near the window. You can come out, Martel. I know you are here. Shroud became visible without warning, causing Wyvern's eyes to shine with a green glow. Enrique stopped his ally with a nod before she could transform. You know me? Shroud asked, surprised. Blackthorn shrugged. We have a file on you, and everyone in the carnival. Did you steal his private data? Ryan asked mirthfully. Dynamis should update its privacy policy charter. I knew this day would come, quick save, Enrique replied, while Shroud formed a seat of glass from his own armor. Blackthorn turned his seat to face the whole group. I suppose that's how you took down the Meta gang, with the carnival's help? Did Hargraves send you to arrest me? Or kill me? No, Len replied, though her tone didn't soften at all. I want answers. Wyvern slammed the mahogany desk so hard that its surface cracked. Her violent reaction made everyone flinch, except Ryan and Enrique. The former, because he saw it coming, the latter, because he had expected it. Enrique, what's happening? The superheroine's fist clenched, some of the documents falling off the desk. Is any of this true? All of it, as far as I can tell. His voice was heavy with guilt and remorse. All their evidence points to my father conspiring with Adam the Ogre to weaken the Augusti. As for our elixir production process, I saw it for myself. By now, Illinois Miglior's shining dragon was positively trembling. Tell me this is a sick joke of some kind. I wish it were. Her manager let out a sad sigh. The knockoffs react violently to Miss Sabino's blood samples. Her father put an unknown agent in her hemoglobin which removes the safeguards on our elixirs. My brother Alphonse wanted her turned into a guinea pig so that we might remove that flaw, and perfect the production process. I put my veto on that, but... This time, Wyvern punched the desk and snapped it in half. Ryan quickly stopped time to save the folder and gather all the documents. You let Tyranno clone me? Turn me into a poison? Wyvern asked, struggling to hold back tears. Enrique, after all, after everything that happened between us, how could you do this? Laura. Your company infected this city's population with a psycho, Enrique. When I learned the truth about how our artificial elixirs were made, it was too late to pull the plug, the CBO replied with remorse. The knockoffs had been distributed to the population. I was put before the fait accompli. Better late than never, Len replied angrily. Why didn't you just stop? Instead of answering immediately, Enrique slowly removed his mask and put it on his desk's left corner. He looked rather handsome, with perfectly groomed hair and a sexy Spanish mustache. He took a lot from his sire Hector, though with a leaner face and more skeletal features. While the father reminded Ryan of Pablo Escobar, the son looked more like a lanky Antonio Banderas. Enrique glanced at Ryan and Len, before locking eyes with the latter. For as little as it is worth, I want to apologize to you both, he declared. What my family did to yours is unforgivable, and you are within your right to hate us. I have a responsibility in hiding the truth from the population, but I never wanted any of this. This was done behind my back. But you covered it up, Felix accused him, while Wyvern wiped away tears of rage and betrayal. If I had revealed the scandal, Adam Cat, then Dynamis would have certainly collapsed alongside any hope of rebuilding Europe into something halfway decent, Enrique defended himself. Do you want Augustus to become the face of our future? We are not perfect, but at least we try to recreate society based on the rule of law. I cannot say the same for our opposition. Dynamis is the only remaining check on Augustus' authority, the last barrier between Europe's population and a deranged genome suprematist. Enrique glanced at the window, and at Mount Augustus sticking out of the horizon. That is why my brother lied to me and created the knockoffs, Sabino. To try and knock these so-called gods off their thrones. Yet your solution presents as great a danger to the world as Augustus, Felix said accusingly. Maybe even greater. The carnival didn't give you the full reasons why we wanted Bloodstream gone to avoid a panic, and maybe we should have said the truth from the start. Our previous seer, Shroud, cleared his throat. My mother predicted that Bloodstream would cause a worldwide disaster if left alive. Our data proves that the risk remains even now. My father, Len's hands fidgeted on her lap. My father could go mad and everyone who drank the knockoffs. Ryan put a hand on her arm, and he could tell she was thankful for the emotional support. Enrique absorbed the news with gloom, while Wyvern looked fit to gag. Dr. Tyranno insisted that his vaccine worked, Blackthorn said, though doubt had crept in his voice already. That it would neutralize Bloodstream in case of a containment breach. Don't trust a reptilian to do a mammal's job, Ryan replied as he broke hand contact with his adoptive sister and extracted a beautiful sheet full of graphs from the folder. Blackthorn quickly grabbed it. Here is our plague doctor's analysis report, Shroud explained. If put in contact with the blood agent in his daughter's hemoglobin, the core of Bloodstream will regain its full power and automatically transform anyone who consumed a knockoff into a clone of itself. And according to our simulations, it might gain the ability to do so on its own as it mutates further. Blackthorn sank deeper in his chair as he read. Thousands. Millions would die in the best-case scenario, Shroud replied. You've got to stop this, Felix insisted. Blackthorn returned the document to Ryan. You came to destroy Lab 66. They wanted to come in guns blazing, the courier admitted, but I convinced them to try finding a compromise. Why? Enrique asked dryly. Out of all the people in this room, you should hate us the most. Because although you look like a Saturday morning cartoon villain, I know you are anything but. If anything, Ryan had come to see Blackthorn as the other side's Livia, an internal reformer doomed to fail without outside help. You're the only hope Dynamis has of reforming into something actually good for the world. We have found a treatment not only for the bloodstream infection, but for the psycho condition, Shroud explained. Though skeptical, Enrique looked willing to entertain the possibility of a cure. Do you have proof of what you say? Of course. Ryan put a hand on his chest. Thanks to our psycho-care policy, my administration is currently curing the Metagang's members. You can come see it for yourself. But we will need resources to cure psychos across Europe, Shroud said. Resources that your company can provide. I want to try the treatment on my father. To try and heal him, and if it doesn't work, Len cleared her throat. If it doesn't work, I want to end his suffering. This is all I ask. I don't even want revenge. I just want him to find peace. Enrique tensed up. My father and brother will never agree. They won't, Ryan agreed. Which is why we're asking you to do the right thing, Jiminy. Though he remained as stoic as ever, the courier's words affected Blackthorn. Ryan could see it in his body language, how the plants in his office shifted. A part of him truly believed in the superhero propaganda he pitched to his customers. Deep down, Enrique Monada desperately wanted to make the world a better place. I'm resigning, Wyvern declared with a hardened voice. I can't stand by this. And neither should you, Enrique. No, I should not, the manager conceded. But if we reveal the truth and arrest my father, then my brother Alphonse is in charge. He won't let his life's work vanish without a fight. He has gambled too much on this project to stop now. Even knowing the risks? Felix asked, aghast. Even so. My brother dreams of a world where everyone is a genome, and thus equal. He would rather die than abandon it. Then we'll stop him too. Adam Cat locked eyes with his manager. You remember the day I first came to this office, Blackthorn? What did you say to me back then? Blackthorn let out a heavy sigh. That even if your family was in the wrong, you were right to take a stand for what you believe in. Start practicing what you preach. Or was that just a slogan? Wyvern put a hand on Enrique's shoulder, making him freeze. The superhero and the corpo exchanged a glance, full of conflicted emotions. Past intimacy, pain over past lies, regrets, a tiny bit of hope. They had been so close that they could probably understand the other's thoughts without saying a word. Even if it's all for naught, Laura? Enrique asked Wyvern. Even if it is all for naught. Someone has to try, Enrique. Or nothing will change. She gathered her breath. Please. Enrique's hand rose to touch Wyvern's, but she backed away from his shoulder before he could make contact. For the first time since Ryan had met him, the courier could see the pain and loneliness behind the Manada's stoic facade. Suppose I'll help you. Il Miglior's manager faced his guests. Even if by some miracle Dynamis survives the destruction of our main lab, our loss of credibility, and my brother's inevitable retaliation, the company will be a shadow of its former self. Easy prey for Augustus. Unless you intend to take him down after cleaning up our house? You have a secret weapon against Augustus, Shroud pointed out. The gravity gun. An untested weapon, Enrique pointed out. You of all people should understand why we're unwilling to take a gamble, Martel. Your organization's last encounter with Augustus ended with half of your members dead, Martel, ours, with Malta sinking beneath the waves. When humans dare the lightning to fall, they die. Ryan felt a sharp pain in his chest, right where lightning but struck him in the past loop. We have another option, he said. Mecrin Tech. Its efficiency has been proven. Technically true, though he left out the gory details. Nothing is ever certain with Augustus, but I suppose this is true for all things in life. Enrique seized Ryan's folder. I will analyze these documents in detail. If you are correct about the potential for an elixir epidemic, if you are correct, then I will contact you again. And the gravity gun? Shroud asked. I will send you the data. Enrique looked away, avoiding Wyvern's gaze. Go now. Not yet. While Shroud vanished and his other allies moved to the door, Ryan turned to Wyvern and spoke one word. Jasmine. Wyvern flinched. What, Jasmine? It's not too late for you and her, Ryan said. All she wants is an apology and recognition. Apology for what? Dragon Mom asked with a confused frown. I never did her harm. She wants you to apologize for never paying much attention to her, and letting her live in your shadow, Ryan said. That's all she wants in the end. Recognition for her achievements, and being treated as an equal. It's really that simple. Wyvern's eyes widened, and the courier could see the gears turning in her head. Is that another prophecy? She asked, Enrique squinting at the courier with suspicion. Are you a precognitive genome too? Sort of. Ryan shrugged. It's not too late to help her turn her life around. But it won't be possible without you. I see. Hoping that she would take his words to heart, Ryan walked out of the office and left the two corpos alone. They were locking eyes as the courier closed the office's door behind him. Though Ryan could tell that not all hope of patching things up was lost, Flower and Dragon had many couple counseling sessions ahead of them. What was that for? Len asked on their way out of the building. I made a promise to a girl once, Ryan said, remembering his Jasmine lost to time. I owed her that much. Ryan drove the Plymouth Fury on the way back home, but the group didn't move to the junkyard immediately. "Here," Adam Kitten said at a key crossroad. "To the southeast." The courier immediately recognized the way. "Family, or friends?" "Friends," Felix said. After half an hour of travel and avoiding 2 traffic accidents, Ryan parked his car in front of Jamie's house. The occupants were already waiting outside, even before the courier and Felix stepped out of the car. Ryan noticed Ki-young's rats in the grass around the house, and tossed a Swiss cheese piece at them. "Why do you carry cheese on yourself?" Felix asked in confusion. "Why wouldn't I carry cheese?" Ryan answered, while Len remained in the car. Though she was improving, she didn't do well with new people. "Baby steps. I have milk too, if you're thirsty." "Only if we drink from the same cup," his sidekick replied, before facing his old friends. Jamie looked as tense as a bear caught in an ambush, while Ki-young appeared torn between joy at seeing Felix again, and worry. As for Lanka, "Look at that, a suicide bomber," Lanka said while opening a beer can. She glanced at Ryan and Len, her eyes hidden behind her sunglasses. "Are they your new team? Come to blow yourselves up together?" "Sort of," Felix replied. Ryan put a hand on his sidekick's shoulder. "We found your cat erring on the road, and adopted him." "Ain't our cat anymore," Lanka replied before sipping her beer. "He ran away, so you can keep it." "Felix, why are you here?" Though he asked the question with calmness, Jamie couldn't suppress the worry in his voice. "Are you returning back into the fold?" "I'm not coming back," Felix replied, before choosing his next words carefully. "But I realized I might have treated you a bit too harshly. I hoped we could stay friends." "Funny, I remember you saying we were done," Lanka replied, unimpressed. "Among other colorful things." "I still believe them," Felix replied bluntly, causing Ryan to sigh. Adam Kitten was about as diplomatic as a prison door. Still, the courier hung back, as it was a private matter between former friends. "Staying with the Augusti is wrong, especially after you saw the damage they caused firsthand." "Felix, you will always remain our friend," Ki-young said softly. "I remember all you did for me, and Jamie too. You will always be welcome among us." "But by coming here, you're putting everyone in danger," Jamie declared. "If Pluto learns you came, you'll die." Felix sighed. "Guys, you're going to die if you stick with them. Even if you don't do anything wrong, Augustus will be the death of you. You will retire in coffins." "They know," Ryan thought, as he observed their reactions. Lanka and Jamie seemed to have accepted it as inevitable, while Ki-young stared down at her own feet. Felix waited for them to answer, before clenching his fists at their silence. "Guys, we can't leave," Jamie said, while his girlfriend looked away. "After dragging Ki-young into this mess, you'll keep her in it?" Adam Cat accused him. Jamie's expression turned into one of disgust, his voice brimming with cold rage. "Drag her into this?" "Jamie was against me joining the Augusti," his girlfriend said while observing her rats in the grass. A dozen of them stopped fighting over the cheese to go back to their mistress, surrounding her like an elite rodent guard. "But we had little choice. I stole from the organization, Felix. They wouldn't have let me leave New Rome alive. Pluto wanted her dead, to make an example for those who would dare to steal Bliss shipments," Jamie explained grimly. "There was no other way to mollify the leadership. What else could we do?" "Run away together," Felix said, unimpressed. "Flee to another country, or join Dynamis. They could have protected you." Something in his voice made Jamie's expression turn into one of suppressed anger. "Felix, if we had abandoned the family as you did, Ki-young would be dead." The mobster crossed his arms, his face grim and sullen. I would be dead, Lanka would be dead, and everyone we ever cared about would be dead. The only reason you're still alive is that your parents and ex-girlfriend have Augustus' ear. Without them? Jamie locked eyes with his old friend. You would be buried in an unmarked grave in Rust Town. Felix flinched, as the words hit close to home. Ryan didn't blame him. He had seen firsthand how far lightning but would go in the past loop, and how so few could hope to escape his grip alive. All right, I see I was a special case, the young superhero confessed, less sure of himself. But let's assume that the Augusti leadership collapses. They won't, Jamie replied with cynicism. They can't. Nobody can defeat the Olympians, let alone Augustus. Ryan shrugged. We can, and we will. I don't believe you, Jamie said with defeatism. But if we succeed? Felix asked. Just imagine that we succeed, that Augustus and his cronies are gone. Would you leave? I'm not asking you to join us, Jamie. Only whether you will simply step aside. Leave the family? Jamie was aghast. That would be betrayal. I owe them everything. If it were not for Mercury, I would be a knob. Yes. Everyone glanced at Ki-young. Yes, the vermin controller repeated, first hesitantly and then more firmly. Yes, I would leave. I would leave and I wouldn't turn back. You're sure? Jamie asked with a worried frown. You saved me, Jamie. But each time I look at Bliss, Ki-young's arms trembled, her gaze haunted by the memories of darker times. Each time, I feel the urge to fall back into it. As long as this drug exists, I will never be free of it. You saved me, but how many others suffer, with no one to help them? If we can escape that poison, if we have a chance, we should take it. Her boyfriend considered her words, doubt gnawing at his heart. He might owe the Augusti everything and felt he belonged nowhere else. But Ryan knew that he intended to marry Ki-young and start a family with her. A real family forged in blood and hardship, rather than a false one built on drug money. Jamie? Felix asked, a hint of hope in his voice. What would you choose? I have to know. The mobster put a hand around his girlfriend's waist, pulling her closer. I would choose her, he said, Ki-young resting her head against his shoulder. Wherever that leads. Felix let out a breath of relief, before glancing at Lanka. And you? Sorry, Bomberman, you won't get a diabetes feast from me. She shrugged her shoulders, tossing her empty beer can away. I won't say a word about this meeting, but I just can't imagine a world where Augustus ain't killing you one day. Ryan put his hands behind his head. Lightning won't strike him this time. And how would you do that? Lanka snickered. There aren't any lightning rods big enough for the marble guy upstairs. We'll put lightning but in a bottle and toss him where he belongs, Ryan promised. With the clowns.